What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel and another trailer breakdown. This one is kind of special because it's been 10 years since this trailer dropped. Almost 10 years from the time of, recording this video. And I wanted to go back because it popped up on my feed. And, as we're doing more trailer breakdowns, I'd love to get in the habit of breaking down trailers for shows, TV shows, movies, even gaming trailers that came out a long time ago. Do breakdowns on them, maybe bring up a little bit of nostalgia, talk about why they were amazing, talk about moments in those trailers that, were going to lead to big things and big moments that we hadn't even anticipated yet. And so this is going to be for the first trailer that ever dropped for The Flash. It was 2014. And it was a pretty lengthy trailer. It was about 5 minutes, and it covers pretty much the majority of the first episode or two. Popping in a few moments later in the season as well that, we eventually get into. But I want to take a moment and just go back and watch this with you guys because I think it's so special. The Flash, if you guys aren't familiar with the channel or with myself, The Flash is one of my favorite superheroes, one of my favorite shows of all time, outside of like Arrow and a few others. And yeah, I spent the last 10 years watching it. And so this is the first year that we're not getting The Flash or the Arrowverse or anything like that. So it's been kind of an emotional time for me. And it's only February. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy the content, if you love trailer breakdowns and you want to see more, or there's a trailer specifically that you'd love me to break down and talk about, be sure to drop that in the comment section. Drop a like on this video if you do enjoy the content, and any sort of support is very much appreciated. And without further ado, let's take a look back at The Flash. 10 years ago, 2014,
got into a fight.
we got our first trailer for
Fast enough? No.
The Flash.
Have a good heart than fast legs.
When I was 11, my mom was murdered. I saw what looked like a ball of lightning. Inside the lightning, there was a man. He killed my mom.
Crazy to think they brought this moment back 9 years later. But this show changed my life. I love it so much. So we had to go back and take a look at
so you can go off chasing down these
the very first trailer.
Everyone you work with thinks you're a weirdo.
You've got to get yourself a girlfriend.
And this trailer was kind of hype.
Life searching for the impossible. Never imagining that I would become the impossible.
The lightning chose you, Barry. You're a wizard. Wrong project.
He was hit by lightning.
How's he still alive? He's coding.
Charge battles to 200. Clear.
Oh my God.
Where am I? You're at Star Labs.
I need you to urinate in this.
What is happening? What is going on?
You were struck by lightning, dude.
Lightning gave me abs.
You were in a coma.
For how long?
9 months. Welcome back, Mr. Allen. We have a lot to discuss.
Harrison Wells.
I watched you die, Barry. You kept dying. Your heart kept stopping.
It's still beating.
Feels really fast.
He came back with some Riz too.
Slowing down.
The boy is a legend.
You were going so fast, it only looked like everyone else was standing still.
There's so much that we don't understand.
What's happening to me?
That first run is sick though.
You had a distal radius fracture. It's healed in 3 hours.
How is that even possible?
We don't know.
How does it fit?
First run.
It's a little snug.
I wish they brought that back in the final season.
That fast.
Just once. I'd love to see him wear the suit again. Just one time.
We've been searching for other metahumans like yourself. Sky
Clive Martin.
boom. Outside is inside.
This was the trailer of all trailers.
Bank robber. I think he can control the weather.
In the beginning
What really happened that night?
of the Arrowverse.
Dimensional barrier ruptured, unleashing unknown energies into our world. Antimatter, dark energy, X elements.
Those are all theoretical.
And how theoretical are you?
I've been thinking too small.
Man, that music.
You're not a hero.
Grant truly was and is the greatest Barry Allen, in my opinion.
Martin! This just keeps getting cooler.
From the creators of Arrow
Metahumans have been busy, but I need your help to catch Martin and anyone else out there like him.
comes a show that'll die after season 5.
It's made of a reinforced
I'm just kidding.
polymer. It's heat and a
I'm just kidding. It was a great show all the way through. We joke because we care.
What if I'm not a hero? What if I'm just some guy who was struck by lightning?
I don't think that bolt of lightning struck you, Barry.
I think it chose you
Because you can inspire people watching over your city like
in a way that I never could.
making a difference. Saving people.
Dude,
In a flash.
tough. It's tough.
It's time to think big.
I'll run around it in the opposite direction.
You'll die.
Dude, they really wanted you to watch this show. Like, it's not often you get a 5-minute trailer.
What happened here?
Just your everyday kind of bad guy shootout. My name is Barry Allen, and I am the fastest man alive. A friend recently gave me the idea for a new name, and something tells me it's gonna catch on.
Yo, it's the 10 out of 10 trailer.
Wear a mask.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, guys. So we just saw the very first trailer that we inevitably get for The Flash. This trailer dropped back in, I want to say, May of 2014, and holds so much nostalgic value to me. So many moments within this trailer are moments that we'll see not only within the first season, but they're moments that we'll see the end of the show's lifetime as well. I mean, some of these moments, specifically Barry in his room, this was one of my favorite episodes from season 9, the final season, as we see kind of what happens in the moments that lead up to the beginning of the show. This was a moment that I really wanted to see them bring up in the final season. And again, I'm so glad that they did. And in my opinion, this is where the show should have ended. And so, yeah, there's just so much to talk about here. Let's take a moment. Let's break this trailer down. I know a lot of it is, if you're watching this video, you're probably a Flash fan and you're probably someone that has seen the show 12 times over. So breaking it down doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but we're going to do it anyway. All right, guys. So we get this first shot of the first couple seconds of the trailer where we see Barry running away from some bullies. I want to talk about this moment because I feel like it's just so symbolic for the show, right? And I never paid attention to the sign, the street sign, West Pender Street. I don't know if that has any sort of if that's any sort of correlation to something within the Flash universe or potentially the Flash comics. But, I like doing these breakdowns because I like to take a moment to pay attention to the little things. And even if West Pender Street isn't something related to the Flash, it's something to keep in mind. It brings our attention to it. And, I really wish, let me know in the comments if there is some relation to this, but in terms of, for me, I don't really know what the relation is there, but I just pointed this out because I just want to pay attention to some of the little nuances. But as you can see, Barry's getting jumped by some bullies. I never understood this concept of bullies. I think it's a pretty cowardly tactic. You're getting jumped by 4 dudes. It really took 4 of you. I don't know. If you really want to show your muscle, 1v1, you know what I'm saying? Hit me up in Rust, and let's do this. The real ones know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I just want to point this out. I love Barry having the red backpack. Obviously, right, very correlated to, his color scheme, the character and, what he wears, Scarlet Speedster, all that kind of stuff. But I really think it's cool that he's wearing red here. Got the red backpack, got the red hoodie on. It kind of reminds me of Clark Kent from Smallville. Clark Kent in Smallville always wore he only dressed typically in colors that represented what he would have inevitably become as Superman. So you always saw him in blue jeans. You always saw him in some sort of flannel. And it was always like red. It was always blue jeans and a red top, or a red t-shirt or something like that. And I always thought that was a really cool nod to like, just remind you who you were looking at. You know what I mean? I feel like it just kind of always brought me back into the show. Moving on from there, we get our first image of Barry and his family. I'm a little ashamed to say this, but if you look at this image, it's a little embarrassing. I did not know, at least for the longest time, that John Wesley Shipp was the original Barry Allen, the original Flash. And so it took me a couple seasons before I ever found that out. And, coming to that realization actually really surprised me, because it's like, wow, like I wish I'd known that going into the show. I would have been 10 times more excited than I already was. But seeing that was a pretty cool detail. Obviously, we get our first look at Barry's mom. And to be honest with you, I didn't really remember Barry's mom or what she looked like, because again, she's only in the episode. She's only in the show for, a very brief time in the first episode. So when she comes back later as kind of this apparition of the Speed Force, and she looks exactly like Barry's mother. I didn't know that was the same actress, because I barely remembered who she looked like. This moment kind of reminds me of Supernatural a little bit. If you guys have watched that show, Supernatural kind of follows suit with that same thing, where their mother was killed in the very first episode, within the first couple minutes of the show, and it kind of kicks off the entire journey for the Winchesters. And so this kind of follows suit, and I love making that correlation between the two shows. How these characters, whether they be the Winchesters or in this case, obviously Barry Allen, are kind of driven by this traumatic incident in their life, which I just feel like brings so much breath and so much life to the character, because it's something that we can instantly relate to. Experiencing something like that where your mother is unalived by something that you can't explain, you can kind of understand why they become so obsessive over it, why they become so, protective of their mother's memory, because it's really all that they have left of her. So anyway, moving on from there, we get our first look at Barry's mom. Obviously, we get the house that Barry grew up in, which obviously comes back into play a few times throughout the show, which I think is really cool. And I'm going to try not to pause it as much, because we got 5 minutes to get through, and I don't want to make this like a 40-minute video. But once again, you can kind of see the flash of red and the flash of yellow. At the time of watching this, I'm going to pause it here because we have to. At the time of watching this for the first time, I really had no idea what we were looking at. And watching this trailer back, which is honestly might be the first time I've ever seen this trailer. Maybe it's the second time, but it's the first time in 10 years I've definitely watched it. And it just brings me back to all the nostalgia that I felt watching this show for the first time. Obviously, seeing Barry witness this, unexplainable incident. We get our first look at Reverse Flash, who at the time, again, I had no idea what or who this was, but this moment's so cool to me now, and it's a moment that I kind of geek out on every time I see it, because again, it starts off Barry's journey, but it's a moment that we come back to in the final season. Years later, after traversing through this journey together, we finally get back to this moment, and we get to see exactly what happened here. And for me personally, I just think that's just the coolest thing. I love moments. I love like when a show pays you for your time. And I know there's a lot that we could say about The Flash. There's a lot that we could say about the show and the shiteness that is the final season. But I think, there are moments within that final season that I do feel like the writers and the directors really tried to reward the audience who had invested all their time. It became a yearly tradition for us, fall of each year. I mean, we were watching The Flash. It was September, October, whatever. Eventually became December, and then obviously it, eventually got pushed back from there. But it became October. That was a ritual for me. It was one of the reasons I loved fall. You had the weather was getting cooler. You had football coming in. And then, basketball was about to get started. And then, of course, you had fall television shows like Flash and Arrow. And when these shows came back, I mean, this was my Christmas. And so to see, this show come back was always really cool. And just seeing this first moment just brings back so much nostalgia. When we see this kind of animation and we see Barry and Reverse Flash fighting each other, I always wish that the animation just stayed like this. And I know it's probably really expensive from, a technical perspective. When we look at the CGI, it's obviously something that gets really expensive for a show like this, that, because you start paying the actors more, you start paying the cast and crew more. And then, for whatever reason, CW, I always imagined, was just giving them less money. And so, naturally, they don't have as much money for CGI. And, I think something I feel like a lot of people forget when it comes to the CGI for this show. And moving on from there, we go from seeing Barry experience this incredibly traumatic moment in his life to being a CSI, right? Trying to solve crimes. And one thing I love about Barry is the fact that we see him experience this traumatic moment as a child, and his entire life up to this point has been with that sole purpose of trying to solve his mother's murder. So he gets in the police department, he becomes a CSI, uses his kind of detective-like skills to be able to solve crimes, not only to help people who might not be able to solve them, themselves, but be able to, provide some closure to people's lives and to others that in a way that he never got. He never got this closure. At this point in his life, his father's in prison for a crime that he didn't commit, but somebody had to go to jail, I guess. And it just kind of, you look back in moments like this and you're like, wow, Barry was always a hero. And I know some people say, well, Barry's just lucky he was chosen. He got struck by lightning, but I feel like he was always doing hero work before he even got the cowl. And so this was a moment that I wanted to look back on, because I know that this isn't anybody, right? This person that Barry bumps into, this isn't anybody, at least anybody significant on, in terms of like characters. But I wonder if this was like a cast member, or not a cast member, but like a crew member or someone who, got a moment to just hop on set and be a, kind of a, what do they call them? Bystander, standby, or background, person. I wonder if this was somebody that they knew, getting their start in the acting world. I don't know. These are the faces that I feel like we often ignore, because obviously the camera's focused on the main characters, focused on Barry. That's who they want you to pay attention to. But I always like to break down moments like this and look back at, in terms of like, what if that was like an executive producer, or potentially someone's on set's nephew or son or something. I don't know. I would love to know the story there. Like, who is that person that Barry ran into? What would be even cooler about that moment in particular is if Barry ran into someone that we would see later on, season 3 or season 4 or something. When I first saw this, when we were just doing the reaction, I almost thought that this was Julian. Like, you guys remember Julian from season 3, Savitar season, right? I always kind of imagined that this was Julian that he ran into. And I don't know. I know it's not, but that would have been a pretty cool thing. Anyway, you get the police scene. You get to see your first look at Joe West, the father figure to Barry when his father was unlawfully or unrightfully placed in prison for his life. This is a moment I want to talk about too, because I really like that that Barry, I like the graphics that they placed on these scenes, and I kind of wish that they did more of this throughout the show. I feel like this is something we really only see in like the first episode or two, maybe a little bit after that, but just seeing the tire tracks, him kind of using his detective like skills. It's moments like this that kind of put you in the driver's seat in a way. You feel like you are Barry Allen, or you're at least seeing things through his perspective. And, again, I know cost-wise probably wouldn't have been the best thing to do, but I really wish that they brought more of these, like, detective-like skills into the show. And it's something that I think they do, obviously it's something we see with Batman a lot, right? He isn't just out there fighting crime, right? He's solving crimes. And I think that's really cool. And this is something that The Flash, as a show, really kind of loses sight of as the show progresses. It becomes more of Barry Allen becomes kind of the side character in a way that I feel like he didn't need to be. And I feel like, I think Barry could have done a lot of good for cases and things if, he was still working as a CSI. And then, obviously, like, other times he's, out there saving people. But, he's the Flash. So I feel like, unlike what Batman can't just be out all the time. You know what I mean? And like Batman, Bruce Wayne does his stuff during the day, his detective-like stuff, right? But then Batman was going out at night and that very much fit with the sense of the character. But this is the Flash, so I think him working a day job and then just disappearing and then coming back before anyone even notices anything happen, I think that was very much possible, and I would have loved to see him kind of do that balancing act a little bit more. But again, I digress. Anyway, we see Captain Singh for the first time as well. We see Joe. We see this other cop that I don't think we really see that much of after this moment. At least I don't think we do. Anyway, everybody looks so young here, which I think is so cool. I mean, they definitely grew up. We get our first look at Iris West, the Iris West. Before she becomes Iris West Allen, she was Iris West, the love interest of Barry Allen, which I think was really cool. I love the kind of will they won't they relationship of really just any show. I just always think it's fun to watch this kind of cat and mouse dance, and obviously it gets old after a while, but I really enjoy moments like this. And I thought Iris was, she a baddie, she a baddie. I know a lot of people say, oh, I wish it was Patty, whatever, but like, listen, it is what it is. Then we get our first look at Barry's secret wall, which, this moment goes by so fast that you could easily miss this. But I think it's really cool that we could see Barry kind of cataloging all of these moments throughout his life, moments of the unexplainable, where we potentially, he's trying to solve this crime. And then in the headline, you could see right near his collar, you can see Nora Allen murdered by husband, which is, kind of just the overall headline, which has got to be just so traumatic to see as a kid, that your father was placed in prison and no one believes you. They think you're a kid, like, they think you're making it all up. But yeah, 1982 all the way to 2000. So Barry's been working, and I would have loved to see Barry, like I said, just solve more crimes, over the course of the show. But we kind of see him doing his thing. I love this iconic shot here, which I think is just always so cool and really defines my experience watching the show, is seeing Barry look up. And I just think this is such a unique shot to get, where it's really just focused on his eyes. And if you pay close attention, you can kind of see the reflection from his eyes to what is at, what's kind of happening before the particle accelerator explodes and changes his entire life. But this moment becomes really important. And I think this is kind of a little bit of foreshadowing, right? Because you see the particle accelerator explode in the background, and then they kind of speed up the camera in a way that almost as though he had his Flash abilities before. Right? Like, I think that transition is so cool. Them kind of going double speed with his, with him looking back a little bit. It's almost like, yeah, he's about to become the Flash. But there's always this part of me that wondered if he was always the Flash even before this moment happens. Then, of course, you have the iconic floating liquids that you see. This is definitely something that is kind of feels like a trademark of the Flash, this floating liquid moment. It's just something that they even bring up in the Flash movie. If you guys remember that, there's a floating liquid moment when I think he's trying to get his powers back. He's trying to be imbued with the liquids, these chemicals that inevitably cause him to become the Flash. One thing I would love is a lot of people say that the lightning chose him, right? And it's the lightning pushing him back into these chemicals that results in him becoming the Flash. But I always wonder what chemicals those are. Like, I would love to know if anybody has like a legit breakdown of what chemicals Barry gets doused in that causes this chemical reaction that causes him to become the Flash, or if it's one of those situations where the lightning literally gave him the Flash powers and the chemicals are really just something that allows easy explanation for us. I don't know, but it definitely, like, in my opinion, it always felt like Barry got his powers from the lightning and not necessarily the the chemicals themselves, but again, who knows? Then you have the doctors putting him on the stretcher, taking him off the stretcher, putting him on the table, right? You can see Barry getting hit with the defibrillator, which I just think is so funny because they have no idea this isn't going to help anybody. Then he wakes up, Star Labs. We get our first look at Cisco and Caitlin. Obviously two of my favorite characters that in my opinion truly carried the show. It's the relationship between these three characters that I think really provides a lot of the backbone and a lot of the meat and bones structure for this series. It really centers around these three. Obviously Cisco being the very, the comedic humor, Caitlin obviously being the just, overly scientific one. She's obviously very smart, very astute, and and then Barry kind of being a little bit of a mix between the two, right? He has his comedic moments, but he also has his moments of, trying to be rational, and he's also a character that has deep emotional trauma that he's trying to solve. And so, Barry definitely has a little bit of all three. But I think it's really cool to see them all interact together. I won't get on a rant about how I feel like they totally ruined Caitlin's character. I've been on enough rants about that, but her telling him to pee in a cup, I just think it's just so hilarious. Obviously, we see Barry for the first time interacting with these two without so much knowing, as we know going back and watching this trailer, how impactful this relationship will be, throughout the course of this show. And I just think it's so cool, not only just from us watching, but it's got to be really cool for the actors themselves to go back and watch this moment of when their characters were first meeting, and not be just overwhelmed with nostalgia. And this, some of the thoughts that come into play for me are like, wow, who would have thought that we would have been on this show, and this show would have ran for 9 seasons, and it would have gone for 10 years. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you almost don't think about. I also love the line where he's like, yeah, lightning gave me abs, which I just think is it's too funny. It really is too funny. Then we get our first look at Harrison Wells, who I will say I was excited about in the beginning, before we realized he was a psychotic murderer who hated Barry as an adult and tried to unalive him as a child. Yeah, it's a lot of drama there. Then we get this shot, which, listen, guys, my boy's got Riz. He has developed a significant amount of Riz since his time away. 9 months later, and all of a sudden he hit puberty, right? He's got the good look. He's got a little V-neck on. He's about to go riz up the girl that has been missing, or that has been missing him, for the last 9 months. I honestly, like, ever since the beginning of the show, I always felt like Barry and Iris were definitely meant to be, and I really love a lot of the moments between them. Then we get our first look at Barry, obviously being the Flash before he knew he was the Flash. He sees this moment, that time kind of slows down for him, which I think is really cool. I almost wish we saw more scenes like that. This moment in particular, Smallville does this a lot, where you would see Clark Kent run in super speed because they just didn't want him to fly for whatever reason. And you see Clark going in super speed, and everything kind of slows down. And I love moments like that. I'm a big fan of slow-mo moments. And so seeing, a scene like this where Barry gets to observe everything as it's happening, I wish we saw more scenes like that, with people just kind of living their lives, doing their thing, but actually seeing Barry run and see everybody kind of be frozen. There's moments like this that you get every once in a while throughout the series, but it's a moment that comes few and far between, especially as the show goes on. Then we get one of my favorite moments in the show, seeing Barry make his first run, which I just thought was so sick. Runs into the laundry machine. This is an iconic moment. This right here, guys, is an iconic moment. Why? Because we don't realize it at the time, but this same laundry chuck, Gamby Cleaners, and I believe the same actor, if I'm mistaken, who runs this truck, comes back in the final season, and this is a moment that I don't think was talked about enough. To get the same actor, and forgive me if it's not the same actor, but to get the same actor, to get the same truck, and to get this motion where Barry runs into the laundry machine or the laundry truck, I just think is so perfect. Such a great way to start his journey off as the Flash. Then we get Caitlin talking to Barry. We get to look at the first suit, which I just think is perfect. Again, I said this in the reaction, guys. I really wish that they had brought this suit back just once, even if it was a flashback, right? I think the Flash was definitely overdue and should have done a flashback episode, even if it was just something like, Barry gets hit with a meta-human, hits him with an ability, right? Puts him in a coma, and throughout the episode, he kind of has flashbacks of some of the greatest hits of the Flash. Of his time as the Flash, his time on the show. I think that's definitely an episode that could have fit in the final season, but instead they had to do a bunch of other pointless nonsense. Anyway, we see Barry run for the first time. I love this graphic too. kind of seeing him run and seeing the streak. And this is something that kind of changes throughout the show too, right? Like at first, before he becomes the Flash, he really is just the streak, is what, articles written by Iris West are calling him. And I love how they kind of design it, the CGI, as a streak of just red light. And then obviously he becomes the Scarlet Speedster. Then he becomes, the Flash, and then Flash, and all that kind of stuff. But I always found that moment to be really cool. And running 700 miles an hour, holy moly, guys. Can you imagine? Then we see Clive Martin for the first time. And I think this is kind of the end of the trail I mean, I don't know. We could do the whole trailer. I guess why not, right? You see Clive Martin. I'll try to pause it, in a few moments, but I'll try not to pause it too many times. We see Barry. This is all kind of from the first episode, too. A lot of these moments that we're seeing are literally from the first episode. We see Barry stare down Clive, gets a look at his face, ends up going and putting hands on your boy later on. This was a pretty heartfelt moment in the first episode, if you guys remember. Barry trying to explain to Joe what he saw. Joe obviously not believing him, thinking that he's just, experiencing some form of PTSD and having some traumatic response from the incident. But whole time, Barry was right. We see Clive Martin become Weather Wizard. We see how he becomes Weather Wizard. We see the first look that we get, I believe, at the particle accelerator, where it was at least, where it used to be before, it exploded. And pretty cool stuff. We see pretty much this is the basis of the show, guys. I mean, this is, the whole spread of the particle accelerator and creating all of these metahumans. I think is pretty cool. My only fear, I would love to experience something like this. Actually, no, I wouldn't sign up for it. But if a particle accelerator were to explode, my biggest fear would be having a really just shite power, or a power that's terrible, I think of Fantastic Four and The Thing, right? The Thing, I always felt bad for him because man, he's really strong and stuff like that. It's great, but he has to stay in he has to stay in this form that he doesn't want and he doesn't like. He feels kind of hideous, and it's just, that's gotta suck. Anyway, then we get our first look at towards the end of the episode. We get our first look at Starling City. Now this is an iconic moment, guys. An iconic moment, and a moment that I want us to talk about, because our first look at Starling City is in Flash is the first bridging moment. This is the first time we see the shows kind of bridging together. And this will inevitably lead to the crossovers, which will lead to more characters showing up in more shows, which will lead to more crossovers. And I feel like I credit the Arrowverse for a lot of the verses that we see now, right? I just read an article today that said that they're going to try to create a Borderlands verse, right? Obviously, we have the Spider-Verse, which is the big deal right now because of the movies. We also have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? It's this shared world of all these characters and all these characters, all these games, whatever, that kind of live within the same universe, and allowing for opportunities of mix match combinations and collaborations and things like that I think are so cool. And for me personally, I really credit Arrow and the Flash for being kind of the trendsetters for that. And I think, probably the MCU existed right around this time, but for thinking back to 2014, I don't know, the MCU might have just started popping off. So maybe you could say probably could say the MCU did it first, but for me personally, I really credit the Arrowverse to being really one of the big pinnacle pillars that got people excited about these kind of things, Then in this trailer, we hadn't seen it yet, but we get a big shot of Star Labs. This will be, kind of one of the frame shots that they give us pretty much through a number of episodes, right? But we see Harrison Wells opening the gate, opening his secret passageway, his secret door. It's so funny to look back at these moments, because these are moments that were so significant and so impactful to the identity of the show. And they're moments that I feel like, for me personally, I easily overlooked. Because this moment happened so fast. Him touching the kind of console where Gideon is, that goes by in a flash. So you almost if you're not really frame by frame stopping it, you'll miss so many of these things. Then obviously we see Barry running after Clive Martin, gets in the truck. I always thought this was a really cool moment where he gets in the truck and he's like, oh my God, how did I do that? And I always wonder if Barry phased in this scene for the first time, or if he actually legit opened the door and then closed it. To me, it looks like the window broke. So I'm assuming he kind of crash through the window, but I don't know. I always question it because I'm like, how did he perfectly end up situated in a car in the passenger seat? But anyway, then you get the car flip, iconic car flip. You get Barry almost escaping the explosion, which I think was really cool. I thought Joe was in that moment, but I could be thinking of something else. Anyway, we're moving on. We get Cisco. God, I love Cisco, man. I miss him. I really do. And I will never forgive them for not finding a way to bring him into the final season in some way. Even if it was a recycled scene or a scene that, already existed, maybe a deleted scene or something like that, just as a flashback. I feel like that's something they could have done. Even if they couldn't get the actor in it, they could have done that. But it is what it is. Anyway, you see Star Labs. You see this kind of magazine that Barry's holding. It's a science showcase magazine. Is it safe? The particle accelerator, kind of giving a little bit of foreshadowing to people's apprehension about the existence of the particle accelerator long before it explodes and changes all of Century City. But I think it's cool to see moments like this where, there's just, for me, it's a lot of world building, right? Like, obviously we know how the story goes, but this is honestly the first time I think I've ever seen this article. Why? Because I've never paused it, it's just, again, continues to highlight why it's so important that we're doing this breakdown right now. These are moments that we easily could have missed. And, now we're seeing them. And I think it's so cool to watch a show all the way through and then go back and, highlight moments that may, even the experts miss, And so we see a lot of deep conversations between them. We get our first look at the suit, which is pretty cool. First look at the suit. It's a lot more of a darker maroon, kind of wine Merlot color, and then eventually transforms to what we know is, his kind of deep ruby red, suit. But looking back, I mean, we've done a lot of suit comparisons and things like that. I still think this is my favorite suit. One of my favorites. I think season 4 and 5, I think got it the best. But I still look back at moments like that and think, wow, that's a pretty cool suit. Get a look at the emblem for the first time, which is pretty awesome. Then we get to see the Flash, Barry Allen, running for the first time in his new suit. This eventually becomes the intro for the entire show, which I think is pretty cool. We get to see Oliver and Barry interacting for the first time. And again, this is a moment that you could easily overlook, but looking back, we realize how important and how impactful this scene is. To see Oliver and Barry having conversations. There's kind of a mentorship there. I feel like they kind of mentor each other. You see this through the crossovers a lot, at least the early crossovers when they start working together on some cases. You see Barry kind of, cause Oliver to become a little bit more tempered in his, in his kind of like his tone and kind of his demeanor. You see Oliver kind of impact Barry as well. And I think it's a beautiful kind of give and take relationship that they have. Even if they don't always agree with the methods in which they do things, I think it's a pretty cool relationship. But then moving on from there, obviously we see, this is a cool moment from the first episode where Barry sees him try to pull a gun, instantly does this little flash thing. Central City Plaza, right? You see Barry saving someone off the cab. These are moments that I miss, moments that I really wish that they could have done a bit more to highlight the abilities of the Flash. Then we get a couple of cut scenes from the first episode when you see Barry being the Flash and doing his thing, right? He stops the tornado, all that good stuff. Definitely a cool moment, and probably one of the coolest first episodes I think you could have gotten for a series. Which, just this idea that Barry's able to do these incredible things, and you kind of get all of that showcased in the first episode, which I think is pretty cool. Again, I don't know why villains think that like screaming helps them improve their abilities, but I don't know. Can we stop that? Can we stop that? I know it's such an anime thing, but and it typically works, right? I mean, I grew up doing this a lot too. I just thought it made you stronger. But and maybe it does. Maybe there's some like psychological stuff there too. But anyway, we get another look at Iris in the back too. We don't really notice this, but we might have got our first look when he fights Clive. Let me see. We might have got our first look when he fights Clive, but we get another grand look at, obviously, Joe walking towards Eddie. Eddie is the love interest of Iris. All of this kind of comes into play throughout the first episode, but we had no idea, you know, when we're watching this trailer, we have no idea. So I think it's pretty cool that we get to see this. We get to see Barry running through the city. This is such a cool shot too, seeing everything in first person through Barry's eyes. Again, it's like similarly to what I said about the detective stuff and when he's actually actively in the field being a CSI. I really wish that we saw more moments like this where we get to see things truly from Barry's perspective, which I think would be really cool. And there are moments that I just don't feel like we got enough of in the show, but seeing him kind of run through the streets, you know, in this first person view would have been so cool. Again, I get why they didn't do it. It's probably an incredibly expensive shot to do, and probably really technically challenging, but I mean, I think fans would have loved it. And that's it, guys. That's the trailer. That's the trailer breakdown. Guys, thank you so much for bearing with me. I know this was a bit of a longer one. I really just wanted to take a moment to go back and analyze every single moment in this first trailer, and talk to you guys about it, because it's something we never did. I didn't even have this channel when I was watching The Flash. So, you know, it's fun to be able to go back 10 years later and look back at the first trailer that we ever got for this incredible show, and just remembering how important this series was going to be for us. But anyway, guys, if you enjoy the content, be sure to drop a like on this video. Greatly helps out the channel. Subscribe and let me know in the comment section if there's a trailer or a show that you would love to see me break down frame by frame. I would love to talk to you guys about some of your favorite shows as well. And if it's a show that I've seen or a movie I've seen, or one that I'm interested in, I would definitely love to do more videos like this, more trailer breakdowns of some of your favorite, you know, shows, TV, movies, and games as well. They're great opportunities for discussions, and they're a lot of fun. So if you guys enjoy the content, any sort of support you can offer is greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new here, all that good YouTube stuff. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.